Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of The Why. I'm your host, Dylan Mullins, presented by All American Roof Pros, All American Heart Studios. Today, sitting down with someone that should feel like a familiar face after our previous episode, Miss Cindy Patterson. Cindy, pleasure to have you. Mother of the previous guest that we had, Mr. Cooter Patterson.
Okay.
And Daniel is probably what you like to hear.
No,
This God-given
he's been Cooter since the day I told his older brother we were expecting another baby.
Yeah, he gave us that whole story. Did you push back on that at all, like for a little bit, or did you just kind of give up?
Well,
early?
you know, when I was pregnant, it was kind of funny, the three little ones, because they were 6, 4, and 2, and they just called the baby Cooter.
And it stuck for the end to the end of time.
Definitely. Most people have never heard of Daniel.
Yes. Do you know Brian Schwab?
I know who he is, yes.
Yeah, so has Cooter ever told you the story about they were at a gun raffle and they announced Daniel Patterson, and he's like, who is Cooter Patterson? He said he went up and reintroduced himself to
high school graduation. Multiple people came up and said, we thought his real name was Cooter.
That's hilarious. Well, sorry to get us off track here, but at the beginning of the episode, I'd love to, if you could just give me kind of like your little 1-minute spiel about who are you?
Okay. Well, I'm Cindy Patterson, wife of Tom Patterson. We've been married 54 years next month.
Congratulations. That's an accomplishment.
A long time. We have 4 children, 6 grandchildren, quite a few step-grandchildren in there, but some of them were out of the picture when the marriages took place, but we still see them.
I love it.
I am a registered nurse. I still have my license for 50 years. I retired after 50 years. I graduated from Providence School of Nursing in Sandusky in 1970, and then I graduated from Bowling Green University of Toledo. It was combined at the time, the nursing program, with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing in 2006. So it was quite a...
That was probably a challenge.
Yeah, I was working full-time, and I started out part-time, finished full-time, and that was awful. A lot of it was online, but I still had to do all the clinical things. And
was that a requirement that the state put into place, or just a challenge for you put in front of yourself?
I wanted to go to college when I was in high school. I really wanted to. In fact, I got accepted at Case Western Reserve's Francis Payne Bolton School of Nursing, which was a big deal then. But my parents said no, I needed to go to Providence. And being a child of the 60s, I did what my mom and dad wanted. In the long run, it was okay, but I really wanted a degree. So when Cooter went to college, I did too. That's
cool. So you waited till all your kids were out of the house and all that burden was gone, and then said, hey, I'm going to accept a new challenge.
Well, some of them were coming back, but... yeah, I did.
So you've got 4 children, as we discussed. What has that been like? Like, as you transition through the kids' stages, right? Like from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and so on. What was that transition like? Like, was it difficult for you guys at times, or did it seem pretty seamless?
I don't remember any difficulties, but I remember being sad when the infant, and then the toddler, and then school age when they were all in school, and then when they got in high school, we just kind of flowed from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
I mean, when they were babies, I was real active teaching the Lamaze and being a little HE leader, and then we got into the parent-teacher things in the grade schools, and then the boosters in high school.
And Coot told us that y'all were very active and still active in the Sandusky community, whether that's the boosters or just helping out with different things. Tom is getting that promotion to the.
He is the president-elect this year. Next year, the president of the Ohio School Board Association.
Which is an awesome accomplishment.
It's real awesome.
Yeah, I bet. So how is that? And I don't want to. I just want to walk down this a little bit. I don't want to harp on it too long. But did you ever? And I think I know your answer too. But did you ever feel like? Because obviously you had to play a support role a lot with Tom's aspirations. Mm-hmm. Did that ever interfere? With any like
me taking a back seat or
something? Did you ever feel like you were in the back seat, or were you along for the ride?
No, I was along for the ride. We a lot of his stuff I help him with, I can write using the right words better than he does. I like to go over his emails and things like that. He will, without a doubt, tell you he married me because I could spell.
I love it.
He couldn't.
I love it. So, and there's some irony there with him being involved with the school district and struggling with spelling a little bit.
Which is kind of why he got involved to begin with.
Yeah.
His school struggles, our kids, a couple of them had pretty severe learning disabilities, and I worked with them because he couldn't. They thought the exact same way, and I was able to work with them. And and I think that's why our kids got into teaching. Our daughters, Cooter's actually a teacher.
Yeah, him and I have a similar I also have a teaching degree as well, and I just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And
my oldest son is a paraprofessional in a special needs classroom at the high school.
Okay.
For some reason, special needs kids tend to be attracted to my kids.
Well, as we found, as you saw, or as you heard about, with Cooter and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the gentleman that he met on that project, which was super cool. And once again, it's cool too. And maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit. But do you feel like your kids' accomplishments to a degree are like your accomplishments too? Because you raised them right, especially in a circumstance like that.
Yes and no. I mean, they could be not wanting. I just, one thing I wanted my girls to have a profession where they could support themselves if need be. Turned out to be a really good thing for our one daughter. I'm very proud of their teaching backgrounds. They have masters, and they've worked very, very hard. Our oldest son never graduated from college until this last March,
which
at
is awesome.
50.
Which is awesome.
Yes, and probably he was the best student of all four. A memory like you wouldn't believe. So I was happy he finally did that, and not exactly sure, when I got my degree, what he's going to do with it, but
he's got it.
He's got it.
That's awesome. So 54 years you and Tom have been together, you said. Mm-hmm. In
September.
What's and I'm sure you guys have been asked this at or coming up on 54 years. I'm sure you guys have what's the legacy dance or whatever they call it at weddings. You guys probably are the last ones standing.
It's the only dance contest I ever would think of winning.
That's awesome. I love that. And I'm hoping my wife and I can win it as well. What's the secret? What's the secret sauce? Because in today's world, we're in a throwaway world, right? Where people just, hey, it's not working, I'm going to give up on it. And I'm sure you guys probably had moments where you struggled.
Probably not struggled with our relationship. Got real annoyed with him sometimes. Like on the way up here, we're cruising along, and I said, "Do you think I should call and tell him we're going to be late?" And he said, why? You don't have to be there till 3:30. And I said, I told you it was 3. So, just stupid stuff like that.
You just learn to deal with it, right?
Yeah, and at this point, we can be really, really angry 1 minute, and then a couple minutes later, it's like nothing happened.
Well, and at this point, you've lived life together longer than you haven't, right?
Oh, yeah. We started dating August 4th in 1970.
Wow.
So we kind of celebrate that day once in a while.
As you should. As you should.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and once again, I completely applaud y'all. And I understand that y'all's generation was less likely to get. It just wasn't a thing. You just didn't throw around the D word. You didn't say divorce, right? But it's amazing to me how, as you grow with someone over that length of time, you learn how to deal with the stuff you're not particularly happy with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you just
like the nonchalant,
go with the flow type.
So the grandkids are a big piece of your life today, and I'm sure...
And we're really close. We own 2 little houses, and we still live in the same little house that we raised the kids with. And then now it's too small. I can't figure that out. But the house next door that we own right now, our oldest son lives there, but our oldest daughter, Ann Cooter, had lived there previously.
I love it.
We bought it. We were going to renovate it for us, and that didn't quite happen. Our daughter, Julie, lives across the street. Cooter lives around the corner. If I'm standing at my sink, I can see him standing at his sink.
I love
through
it.
the neighborhood. And our other daughter just lives a few blocks away.
What do you think is the secret there to having such a close-knit family?
I have no idea, because I worked with a lot of wonderful people who were very close families, no situations, but they had one daughter in D.C. and one in San Francisco or Los Angeles, and I would be embarrassed at times to say, mine were right on top of us, literally.
But at the end of the day, so just a little bit of background, my grandparents, my dad's parents, my grandfather is my hero, and one reason why is because, if I look, and I think your family, as I talk to Cooter more and more, I think your family probably reflects with this too. By all accounts, everyone in that family, to their own degree, is successful. Regardless of what they're doing something to a degree of success. And that could even be flipping burgers at McDonald's. It doesn't matter. They're going to do it very well. They're going to do it well. Yeah. But they're also very close. Like, my uncle owns the house across the street from my grandparents. My grandparents are both no longer here, but the secret, I want to figure that out. That's why I ask you that. It's a selfish thing.
There are times when things are too close.
Yeah, of course.
You just step back a little bit.
Yeah.
The grandchildren, I literally see most of them every day.
I love that. That's got to be so special for you.
Yeah, our oldest granddaughter is a teacher.
Okay.
The next one, a grandson, will be a senior at the University of Cincinnati in criminal justice. And when he graduates, he's coming back here, at least as of right now, to go to the police academy, which makes me really nervous. He's the only, he's like 6'3", 6'4", so he's the only one that really inherited my height, and I stress that he got it from me. Then my next granddaughter is an LPN. She graduated last year and went directly into an LPN RN program, and she'll graduate from there in November.
That's got to make you proud, following in Grandma's footsteps.
Well, it's really fun studying with her. She brings me her notes, and I read her notes and make it a question, and she answers it. And then the next is my granddaughter, Belle, and she's going through some hard physical things right now, but she's got the cutest personality when she feels good. and she's taking a little break from school. And then Max will be a senior, and he's a good boy, real good boy. And then Cooter Scarlett's in 6th grade.
I adore
at
Scarlett.
the middle school. She's a cutie.
She's a really good kid.
She now is allowed to walk from our house to her house with the phone on, or whatever it's called. I'm not really technical.
On FaceTime or something like that.
Yeah. So I do see them almost every day.
That's amazing. And like I said, that's got to feel so special because, like, my mom lives here in around Mansfield, and then my wife and I live in Norwalk. So it's more difficult, right? It's a 45-minute drive to get to come see, her granddaughter. And my parents are very good about trying to get there, but it's not a blessing that everyone has.
Yeah,
and that's super beautiful that you guys are able to have that.
It is. Very much so.
And so the something that Cooter told me that I'd like to talk about. So the nursing career, obviously, and he said that there was a time during the AIDS epidemic when you were one of the only nurses that would deal with an AIDS patient.
There was a group of us. What was going on? There was one doctor who was seeing all the AIDS patients, and because of the mystery and the seriousness of the illness, not many of the doctors, if any, right at first, even doctors I just thought the world of, didn't. But the one doctor, and we formed a little support group, and we did what they needed, like, maybe never heard of it, the PICC lines, the IVs that are in the arms for a while. I had to go to the x-ray department to assist them because nobody else would, which seems like, I took an oath when I became a nurse to work like that. And he said, his dad got called to World War II and he went. The AIDS epidemic called him and he went. Well, eventually things all leveled out, but there was a period of time that just a few of us really worked. Some extremely interesting patients. Patients were coming from all over to Providence Hospital because they knew they could get care there.
What in that moment, and you already said that you obviously took the Hippocratic Oath, which said
not exactly. I mean, it's not like
it's not a law, right?
A legal thing.
Yeah, but that's something that you took seriously. Did you ever have any doubt in those moments, like that's what you were supposed to be doing, or any fear? Was there any fear involved? I
don't think there was any fear. I remember one time this patient came in, and Roberta, my friend, he was a mess. I mean, scraggly, dirty, emaciated. So we go in to get him, and Roberta says he needs a bath. So we took him by cart into the room where we give baths, got him in the bathtub, and Roberta shaved him, gave him a haircut, we washed him, and we got all done and went, whew, he looks like Mel Gibson. So we're careful, very careful.
As you have to be, and I'm sure you were careful with most patients, and not knowing exactly what they had.
Well, now it's everybody. Then it was a big deal. Like when I first started nursing, we didn't even wear gloves for everything.
Right.
So.
Yeah. What did you see? So 50 years in nursing, which is amazing. What kind of transitions did you see? Like, is there anything that surprised you that came about over the course of the 50 years?
The one thing that always comes to mind is cataract surgeries. When they first started doing them, the patients were in the hospital several days. They had sandbags on their head, and to bathe them, we had to get a whole crew of nurses in, lift them, wash them that way, layer them down, and there were times when the doctor stood at the foot of the bed directing us that we couldn't tilt the patient.
Wow.
And now they go into the office and have it done and go home.
I have a friend, he got cataracts, or he got LASIK, and they told him don't drive home. Well, of course he did. And it's crazy, though, because like there was a moment in time where it was, this bedridden thing, and now you got folks that are driving home from that, and they shouldn't be.
No, no.
But folks do a lot of things they're not supposed to.
Probably. But anyway, and well, I don't want to say less compassionate care, because I know a lot of working nurses and my granddaughter are very compassionate. But it's a different kind of thing. I mean, stuff that we had to do without fail, you no longer have to do. And
yeah, and I think that's just not necessarily even nursing changing. I think it's just the world.
A lot of it's, insurance.
Liability, a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the main reasons why I couldn't do teaching, because of all of the ways that you have to focus more on a test than you do just being there for your kids.
Yeah, learning to take a test. And
yes.
I think a lot of teachers struggle with that. A lot of paperwork, and people that don't really teach making the rules.
Yeah, non-practitioners asking you to do practitioner things, right? It is a mess, and I don't know what the solution is. I personally, and maybe this would branch out into the nursing field as well, but I'm working right now on a program to get inside of our schools and start working with the teachers first on a mindset shift, to get back into the reason why you did it. Because I think everyone goes in with the right mindset, kind of like the nurses, and then they get caught in the rat race, and they get, bogged down by all of the crap that comes along with it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. My one daughter said, you just kind of go with it, and because obviously one person's not going to change it, so you work on it. And it's interesting when I go to some of the dinner meetings with my husband, listening to the speakers there and the legalities of stuff that school board has to go through.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there's too many layers, and red tape is what it comes down to. And I think it was all put in place for the right reasons, but we don't realize the side effects that come with it, right?
Yeah.
It's it can be messy. I'm thinking of, as I sat here and thought about your timeline for when you retired, it seems like it was probably right around the time of the pandemic.
Actually, I retired in December. The last day of November. In December, I had some minor surgery. In maybe February, I tried to find out if I could work as needed in the department, and there was a bunch of red tape with doing that. I needed to be hired as a new employee and all that junk. And then COVID happened, and I thought, that's a sign.
Yeah, it would be. That's why I was curious if that was part of your. So it sounds like you just did your 50 years, and you're like, I'm good. I did everything I needed.
No,
to accomplish.
I really wanted to work at least maybe 6 more months. But in a secondary insurance thing that my husband had, because he retired first, wouldn't be available to me unless I finished by the end of the year. So that was the thing that moved me to retire when I did.
I was just curious if that played anything into your, your decision of
the COVID thing didn't, although I was a lot older than I was during the AIDS epidemic. The one thing that cracked me up, and rightfully so, all over the place there were these signs about our heroes, the nurses and all that. I thought, dang, we did the AIDS epidemic and we weren't heroes.
It's funny because, like, my brother was in the military and he won't take any recognition for it, like, at all. And I think much like in that vein, like, you're just doing your job. right?
Yeah.
And it's nice to get your flowers. It's nice for people to say, hey, thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like, it's what you're called to do. It's what you're going to do, right?
One time I got an award, and I'm not much for awards, but there used to be this huge breast cancer clinic that they had in Sandusky, and actually friends of ours were in charge of it, and I helped a little bit. Well, the one year I wasn't going to help, I can't remember why, but my friend kept encouraging me to go, and I thought, oh, well, I'll go. So then they had a breakfast after the initial people coming in, and the North Coast Cancer, and I'm not sure it's even called that anymore, gave an award in memory of one of their nurses called the Compassionate Nurse. And so I'm sitting there, and the doctor giving out the awards was talking about this nurse that was going to get it. And they said, and she works in pre-surgery testing at Firelands Hospital. And I thought, oh my goodness, Robin's here. And I'm looking all over for her because that was my friend who I thought was very compassionate. And here it was me. I was so dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. But
so are you someone that tends to be harder on yourself than you really probably should be then?
Oh,
and just hearing that story?
Maybe my inner OCD comes into play a lot. I mean, stupid stuff for, like when I was in nursing school, I had to score the highest or whatever. And when I went back to college, I had to get my transcripts from all those years before. And I saw that I was 5th in my class. So I'm trying to figure out who might have been ahead of me, and I could think of 2 of them. So I called my roommate, who was my roommate, and I said, who do you think? And she said, give it up. So I thought, oh, okay, I guess it doesn't really matter.
And I think that, too, that's part of, like, just wanting to be competitive, too. There's probably some competition in there,
Maybe.
And obviously, knowing a little bit about your family, especially more so Cooter, obviously that's my main point of reference. But he's a competitive person, by and large, and it seems like some of that probably came from Mom more than I.
Probably,
which is a good thing.
Cooter and I wound up. Well, 2 of our kids have learning disabilities, and Cooter and I work together a lot.
And obviously, being the last born plays into that.
Yeah.
Not. I don't mean it's derogatory, but a mommy's boy, a little bit, or mama's boy.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let him go. You don't want to.
Well, I don't think it was that. It was just that a lot of teachers were teachers because they did really well in school and they loved the subject matter. The English teachers loved to read, and it was not. They couldn't comprehend somebody that struggled to read or flipped words. And I think I was looked out for their needs.
Which is what a mom's supposed to do. Supposed to do. To make sure you don't want to help them. You don't want to push them.
No, you don't want to do it, but
you also want to make sure that they're getting a fair shake.
When Cooter applied to the University of Findlay, his grades were not good enough. His ACT scores were not quite good enough. But they had this program called the Foundations Program, and he had to write a little essay about a teacher that helped him the most. So we sat down, I'm typing, he's telling me what he wants in it, and I'd type it and I'd say, you want that word or not? And he'd change it. And anyway, when we went for the interview, the interviewer handed the paper and she says, this is a wonderful paper. Did you really write it? And I thought, I wonder what Cooter will say. And he said, every thought and idea was mine, but my mom and the computer helped. And she literally turned the paper over and said, "You're in. You just admitted you need help."
That's amazing.
And Cooter asks for help when he needs it.
He does, and I can testify to that. That's something that, you never wish that your kid has something where they struggle with, and I wouldn't even call it basic stuff. I mean, it is more difficult stuff with the dyslexia and stuff, which we talked about from the previous episode, but that's the key, right? Like, we're not always going to be successful in one area.
Yeah.
We need some help sometimes, and it's okay to ask for help.
We had taken our one daughter to the University of Toledo. It's called School Problems Evaluation Clinic. And when all was said and done, the doctor said, your daughter is in the gifted learning disabled range. Her IQ was in the gifted range, but she had a learning disability. And she was also physically pretty active. And he said, if ever they deny her the ability to participate in sports, please call me because I'm ready for a lawsuit. And he also said one thing, that a lot of the very gifted athletes have learning disabilities. And you see that with, they used to call them dumb jocks, but not really.
Yeah, they're very intelligent typically. They just, John Maxwell says it's the best if you judge a fish by, you send your ducks to eagle school, right? If you send your duck to eagle school, he's going to fail every time. If you ask him to soar with the eagles, he's not going to do it. But if you ask the eagle to go sit on the pond all day and do duck things, he's going to fail that too. So you have to evaluate on an equal playing field for what our skill set is.
Right.
And I think that's a big problem within our education system, if I'm being quite frank.
Well, one time, and I don't remember all the names, but at the last page of Sports Illustrated, there was an editorial. Somebody named Riley, I think, but I don't remember. And he wrote a really derogatory article about Andy Kazimir, who was a football player, and mocking the classes he was taking in school. But his parents were both very well educated and had significant jobs. And they said they knew early on that his quality was he was a wonderful football player. So they promoted that, which I agree with. Well, anyway, after I read this editorial, and I'm thinking, this guy, he's a journalist. He loves writing. He loves reading, analyzing things. That's good. But can he get in that pool and swim like my kids can?
Exactly.
And I wrote this scathing letter back to him, and nothing ever happened.
Of course. You probably weren't the only one, I assume.
Yeah.
Right? No. It's crazy. It's crazy how the world looks upon people that learn different. I think that a learning disability is just an indicator that they're probably good at something else. Right? It
could be, yeah.
Typically. I mean, for the average Joe, right? And that's why they moved the autism to a spectrum, because, and you hear the savants and things of that nature, and they're usually really good at something, but it's just not the something that they're being tested on that day.
Yeah.
Right? My youngest brother, he had some attention deficit disorder problems and things of that nature, but the kid is smart as a whip, and quite frankly, I think he was just too smart and then just didn't want to pay attention. He was just, it was boring. It was boring to him.
Our one daughter this summer took professional development class on dyslexia. And one of the last days, she texted me and she said, something is really wrong with the fact that I'm sitting here having flashbacks and tears in my eyes, remembering how she was treated.
Because she has dyslexia as well?
Yes. And she actually has 2 masters. Anyway.
It's not a measure of intelligence at the end of the day. It's just not seeing symbols the same way that everyone else does.
Right.
And that's what's crazy about it, And Cooter actually did a beautiful job of explaining it, that, how letters are turned and things are just a little bit different. And although you may know, you don't know. Like me, I'm like Tom. I have a spelling problem. Like, I remember failing. I didn't fail biology class, but I failed a test. because I couldn't spell the right. And of course, you have to have everything to a T.
Right.
And I remember going up to the teacher, and she said, "Well, you spelled it wrong." But I said, "You couldn't deceive or derive what it was." Well, yeah, I could. And I'm like, well, here's a biology lesson for you. I think it's hereditary. My dad can't spell. I can't spell. That's biology. And she just was like, "Get out of my class." And I was like, okay. Like, you know.
I had a teacher, when I said that Cooter was supposed to have a quiet area by himself to take a test, and it was on his IEP, and he goes, "Well, I don't do that." And I said, you either do it because it's legal.
It's not optional.
It's not it's not optional. You have to do it. So I wasn't his favorite parent. So
that's too funny. Yeah, if the kid's on a WEP or an IEP, you have to follow it. I mean, it's basic. It's like it's like just teaching 101. They talk to you about it. You have to take a legal class on it.
You know, our kids were of the era where a lot of teachers weren't trained in it.
Yeah, where they had been trained prior to IEPs even being implemented, so they were unaware.
Right.
But you would think there would be some professional development in place through leadership to make sure that we're all up to speed, right?
Oh, well.
And, well, luckily today most of the teachers are pretty well educated and adjust. But that would be very challenging, especially as that stuff's... I'm assuming IEPs were relatively new at that point then.
You know, I don't know when they came into effect. I just know that they had them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then the one thing I did learn is you never get rid of your IEP. With our daughter, they said, well, she won't need it. I can't remember exactly when they told me she didn't, so I thought, well, I'm not a teacher. I guess she doesn't need it. Well, then when she got to college, there was no special help. So then when Cooter came up through that, we knew...
Keep that in place.
Yeah, we don't ever get rid of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. How was that, like, how was that process to identify that your kids were struggling? Like, was it a teacher that came to you, or you guys realized it?
I went to the teacher with our oldest. She was failing unit tests in reading, and she would bring them home, and it was like a fill in the blank with a sentence from the book. And I think, this is strange. Well, so I would ask her the same question, and she would open the book, go right to the page, put her finger on the word that needed to go in there, and it wouldn't come out the other end. And there's a name for that, which I have forgotten because it was like
of course.
40 years ago. So I went to the teacher, and if one teacher told me they just have to try a little harder. Too many times. You know, they're trying harder than
most of the kids in the class.
Kids. Anyway, she got all done and telling me that she needed to try harder, and finally I said, what can I do to help her? I'm a nurse, I'm not a teacher. And she looked at me like I was half-baked. I don't know. So that's when I took her to that place at the University of Toledo. A wonderful pediatrician recommended it. It was all-inclusive. They checked eyes,
went through
hearing,
the whole thing.
Speech, you name it, physical. Yeah.
Which is really good, and it's always a blessing when you can have something like that in your corner.
I don't think they have the program anymore because maybe the schools do it more than they did then. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the schools, if I remember correctly, and I coached for 11 years or 10 years. I coached wrestling, and I think the schools are doing a better job of trying to be proactive and identify it before it becomes a long-term issue for the kids. And I think, too, and this is something Cooter and I talked about, that, you know, he was, at that time, and this is why, I assume that it was relatively new, because they put him almost, instead of just putting them in an IEP relative class, they were put in just a general special needs class.
Yeah.
Which wasn't something that those kids needed.
When he got to high school, they put him in this one class, and he was not happy. So I called the principal, who actually was a friend of ours, and he said, why don't you go in and audit the class someday? Keep Cooter at home and you go in. And they were kids, with very delayed, you name it. And I went down to the office and I said to him, thank you for letting me do that, but don't ever recommend it to another parent.
Yes.
In Cooter's situation.
Yeah, and it's good that they've made that transition now, but at that moment it's probably very frustrating because you're going, not that I don't think that my kid needs help, but he doesn't need this level. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, you're robbing another child that needs that level of help by having him in there, and that's kind of a way to look at it too.
Actually, my granddaughter, the one that's a teacher, one of her big papers she had to do, I think she was still in high school when she did it. Anyway, is inclusion beneficial for all students? And there's a big majority of people, with typical kids that their kids are being not addressed as well. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword at the end of the day, unfortunately. And it would be very challenging as a parent. And good on you guys for stepping up. I've said it continuously. Being a good parent is a heck of a lot harder than being a bad parent. Bad parenting is easy. You could have thrown in the towel on Cooter and said, figure it out, man. And then who knows where life would have taken him at that point. But I think that's a good testament. And as we dissect what makes your family so successful and so close-knit, I think that's a good indicator, in my opinion, is that, y'all were willing to do whatever it took. It's the same thing in business, and I think this is why Cooter's embraced working here so much, is because it's just whatever it takes. You do whatever it takes. I got to pick up your slack, you got to pick up my slack, we'll work together, we'll make it work, and all that good stuff. And I think that's a good, almost family motto.
Well, I don't know if it's official or not. I just think, fortunately, all our kids are very aware of other people and what's going on with them and compassionate to other people's.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is. So what was the let's talk about the transition from you as a mom to you as a grandma. You said grandmotherhood is more challenging. Is that how you worded that?
I'm not sure if that was the right way. When our oldest granddaughter was born 22 years ago today.
Well, happy birthday to her.
Yeah, when we were awaiting her arrival, my husband kept saying, now, let's not go stupid over this first grandchild. We'll probably have more, don't go all gaga over it. So he was in the delivery room when she was born, and she was minutes old, and he walked over and he looked at her and said, don't suppose she'll ever do anything wrong. So it's real. They don't do anything wrong in my mind. And my kids did. My kids were guilty until they could prove to me they were. So.
No, you went the opposite and said innocent until proven guilty, and you're going to have to smack me with the facts. I'm going to have to see it myself, right?
Yeah. I'm all the grandkids are real hard workers. Intelligent. A couple of them had lots of issues to overcome and have done so.
Which is beautiful.
Sometimes everybody else had to back out a little bit. This is the parents' issue. They'll ask for help if they need it. And so... Was
that harder in the beginning not to, especially being a nurse, want to stick your nose in a little bit and help where you felt like you were helping and just let them be parents? Was that difficult?
A little bit. But one of our grandchildren who had multiple issues is the greatest kid now, so
it all works out.
I guess his parents did the right thing.
It's and I've also heard a lot of grandparents say it's beautiful because you can spoil them, give them all the chocolate, and then send them home, and Let it be mom and dad's problem, right?
When Scarlett was little, she would go grocery shopping with us, and she always liked sprinkles. So we would shop to find the sprinkles she wanted, and my standards have lowered a whole lot as far as diet is concerned.
Once you have grandkids, it's out the window. We can have ice cream for breakfast, right?
Maybe.
No, it's a really, it's got to be so rewarding, and it's a testament to y'all's legacy as well. Like, your kids are your legacy, but then to take it the next generation further and say, hey, we've got a little bit more.
The one thing is real interesting, they're all very proud of their grandpa for all he does and how hard he works. And that is, his school board stuff is really thankless. And two of our kids were already employed by the schools before he went on the board, so there's no nepotism there.
Of course.
They were already hired, but...
Yeah, and it shows y'all's passion towards education and making sure our kids are educated properly.
It's been hard on them. People obviously would say things that they hope they took back to him, and trying to get information from the kids that he might have said. So I don't think it's been easy for them with him on the school board.
I can only imagine. Anything in the public eye is never easy.
No.
And any public service is a thankless opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? And
I remember one time I was watching this thing on TV, and it was some presidential thing, and the reporter said, I can't imagine why anybody would want to be president. And I thought, I don't know why anybody would want to be on the school board.
Yeah, at least you get a little bit of ego boost when you go up to the president.
Maybe.
But you probably don't get much ego boost. It probably deflates your ego as fast as it was inflated on the school board. Yeah, and everybody thinks they could do better, but yet nobody wants to step up.
Right.
And that's probably the most frustrating thing. And then once you're in the public eye, you kind of almost lose your voice a little bit, I'm sure.
You do, and you find out how things are run and why maybe somebody made the decisions in the past that they did. I don't know. It
opens up the curtain a little bit more, right?
It's honestly a path I never thought we'd take. My husband has this tendency to join an organization, like he took a CPR class once. Next thing I know, he's on the Red Cross board. He came home and he said, I'm going to run for president of the board of directors, or whatever they called it. And he said, but it's okay because the guy that was there was going to do it again. Right before the election or the whatever, he backed out. And so then my husband was it. And he did the same thing with our church, with the president of the council. That time the man he was running against died.
Oh, wow.
That was not pleasant, but
of course
nobody else wanted to step up, so he was it. And
he has a very if not me then who mentality, right?
Maybe. He started working in the boosters. Next thing I know, he was the president for God knows how long, and that led into the school board. So, but
it's got to be very fulfilling to know that his work that he's doing is hopefully making an impact.
Hopefully, his job allowed him to do those things.
Of course,
they were very promotive of people being active in the community,
which is beautiful.
So maybe it wasn't the best job in the world, but it did allow him to do that. So,
and they all have their perks.
Yeah.
There's negative in every job.
Yeah.
Not every job is sunshine and rainbows by any means.
No. No.
As we get towards the end here, I'm looking at our time. I like to open the last couple minutes here. It's your floor. You can say whatever you like in case there's something we didn't get out there that you feel like is on your heart.
Well, I'm passionate about my kids and my grandchildren. as I retired, I started working with the trainer, and he asked me what my goal was, and I said to not lose anything more. Today I went to a doctor, and I have one aches and pain, and then another one, and then another one, and he said, well, think of yourself as a vintage car. You look great. And but, you know, you got to tinker with one thing and you get that fixed, and then you got to tinker with another thing. I thought, great, now I'm a vintage car.
Well,
So.
it's, I do have one more question for you that I had forgotten about. When you made that transition from in the workforce to out of the workforce, did you struggle with anything like losing who you were? Like, did you feel like you lost your purpose at all?
Maybe a little bit. I really missed the pleasure, actually, and the interesting aspect of my last job, which I would visit with 6 or 7, sometimes more, patients a day who were going to have elective surgery, and I had to get their history and stuff.
Okay.
So I missed meeting somebody and keeping current. Not a day would go by that something would come up and I think, what in the heck is that? And have to look it up. Actually, on my last day of work, I did a visit with a patient, and they lasted 45 minutes, so we would talk quite a while. And before the end of the day, that patient sent me flowers.
Really?
Yeah, I thought, wow.
You made an impact on someone.
Well, I didn't do anything special that day, but, you know, I had told him it was my last day.
Oh, okay. Well, that was super sweet, though.
Yeah. I missed working. When I went to tell our human resources department when I wanted to retire, they went, oh, yay. And I went, no, this was hard. This was real hard. So, and through the years, I went through phases where the group I started with, and I moved on to another group, and then another one. And each one were groups of very compatible working together. So
you were pretty blessed.
Fortunate, yeah.
The reason why I ask is because, like, I notice, and you've probably seen this with even some of your friends or peers, is I think when sometimes when folks retire, they almost like lose their identity, and then they like go downhill really fast. Yeah. And that doesn't seem to be you.
No, it definitely. My husband was worried, and all of a sudden he's getting close to retirement, and he's going to be the district commander of Power Squadron, something at the yacht club, and I thought, wow, well, you know.
You're staying busy, man.
Yeah. I started doing little things that I didn't have time to do when I was working. I joined the quilting group at church. I started drawing again. I draw, this is silly, church steeples.
Okay. No, that's super cool.
I probably have done about 80 of them now.
No kidding.
So during COVID, we would drive around. We'd come across the church steeple. My husband would stop the car. I'd hop out, take pictures, and he'd go around the block and pick me up. So.
No, it's super cool. And it sounds like you've kept yourself busy, and I think that's half the battle in something like retirement when you make that transition, right?
Yeah.
It's... I think too oftentimes people get caught in what I call an identity crisis, where they have their whole identity in being a mom, being a nurse, being something instead of being Cindy.
Yeah.
Instead of being who you are. And it sounds like you figured out who you were, and you've
I don't think
got
I did
done.
much thinking on it. I think we just...
You were already doing it anyways, right? You just happened to bump up a couple areas of life where you had an extra time.
You know, my dad was a volunteer like you wouldn't believe. And he loved Sandusky a lot. And I guess maybe you see that and then you do it. The one thing I joined, I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, but I thought, oh, well, what the heck, is Rotary.
Yep.
And I really enjoy doing some of their projects, some of the ones I can do, some of them like standing for 8 hours passing out water. I thought, I don't think I can do that.
That's not for me, yeah.
But I take care of their little library, and I don't even know if the Rotary runs it anymore, but I go down and straighten up the books. stuff like that.
Which is great. And it's like I said, it's keeping those hands busy. It's doing something.
Yeah.
Too many people have this vision that they're just going to go home and sit on their couch and then, they deteriorate fast or something like that. You can't do that. You got to keep doing something and stay involved.
No. We love Cedar Point. We probably go over almost every day.
Really?
And walk around.
Which is a great asset to have up there.
Yeah.
Just to get your steps in. Nothing crazy, right? It's just
well, my steps don't go quite as fast as they did last summer, but yeah. We like doing that and kind of miss it when we miss a day.
That's awesome.
So.
Well, perfect. Well, I appreciate you for coming on, Cindy. I really appreciate the conversations we were able to have here, and I think it was cool to get some insight into what you've done with your life and what you'll continue to do. I have high aspirations that you'll continue to support Tom, do your quilting, do all your stuff.
Well, I taught synchronized swimming all those years. It was called synchronized swimming then. Now it's artistic. And I was just thinking, I did that for a long time at the Y, and I really loved it. And our daughters and granddaughters were very active in the synchronized swimming group. And just a couple weeks ago, I was helping one of the girls, and it's called Swan Club, perfect a few little things. And I thought, I'm not going to be getting this out of my system anytime too soon. So
maybe you'll pick that up here soon.
I tried doing a couple things, and I thought,
not that one, right?
I can't do that anymore.
Well, I love it. Well, thank you again for the conversation. Thank you for being able to provide something to our audience. And I think that, like I've said always, guys, if you didn't get anything out of today, that's on you. I think we've got some really good conversations here. Some good advice on marriage, long-lasting marriage, being a supportive spouse. Having a kid with a learning disability or some form of special needs. There's something in here for everybody. So, as always, feel free to share this episode, get the word out there, and continue to help us. And as you keep going through what you're doing, keep asking yourself, what's your why?